Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Mana on the Rocks. It's I, Bald Dude. Joining me this week, as always, my co-host Atlas.
Hello, everybody.
This week, we're back on the grind. Well, Atlas is on the grind. I'm stepping back into the grind. We're talking just tournaments. We're seeing some pretty decent meta shift. So kind of a follow-up to one of the earlier episodes we talked about where we wanted to see kind of how Lord of the Rings kind of shaked out. We talked about that. Talk about all the hot button issues that we're seeing, stacks effects, wheels, all the good stuff. So you should come on down, get a drink with us.
But yeah, we just got off a smaller event from this past weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You finally got to play in that one.
Yeah, first tournament for me for a while. I've been busy and unable to go to all the tournaments y'all have been going to. So it was good. I brought a new deck that I've been tinkering with, the Timnatana deck that I've been talking about, and it feels very good. It feels like I found something that I want to do now in CDH. It's just figuring out what to do with what I want to do, essentially. We were talking before we actually started jumping into this. The baby pod list that's been running around, the Will the Wise and Max the Daredevil, or whatever the counterparts are for those. Because I'm probably not buying the Stranger Things or the Stranger Things cards because they're expensive. This list is sweet. Sans Blue is pretty sick.
Oh yeah. There's some really neat things about that. The person who was playing the list, who I first encountered it with, STEM God. His name is Zach. Really cool guy. Very good pilot. Showed me this list in an event we played together. Dude, blew my mind because I had been when the Stranger Things kids came out. I had been trying for a while to figure out how to break them, and Baby Blue Farm was a thing for a little bit that some people toyed with. Obviously, just Blue Farm is just better. Just wasn't good enough. I messed around with the idea of doing something in Teamer, which I didn't really care for too much. I toyed around with Sans White for a little bit, with 11, messed around with 5 color, and just everything just felt like the commanders didn't contribute really anything other than gimmick and cool factor. Just alternatives to better partners or 5 color commanders that were that were just that. They were just better. So it was meh, but then busted this out and I was like, oh, that's sweet. And then started playing some games against it. And he's over here doing Pattern of Rebirth stuff, but also Kiki Jiki lines. At the time he was on Mirkwood bats and flickering his commander as an outlet and stuff. Really neat stuff.
Yeah, it gets to play Teamer Sabretooth. It's just a lot of the really good creature combos. Actually, no, I actually don't see Teamer Sabretooth here. Oh, right, they're on MEL. That makes a lot more sense because you immediately get the triggers. Yeah, Dockside, you get to do the will thing on ETB and LTB. That makes sense.
Yeah, don't have to worry about rule of laws.
It's really good.
It's so cool. Obviously, I would never have come across this pairing because I only play stuff with blue in it because I need a crutch. But
hey, you had a stint where you were on Borborygmos. All right.
Hey, that was cool. That
list was pretty sick. I do like.
And then I realized that casting counterspells was better than playing cards that told other people to slow down their game plan. So
it's all right. That's fine.
So yeah, but it's really neat. I think that it's very cool how the list capitalizes on having that infinite mana outlet in the command zone. There's some really cool tech with it.
Yeah, it's a list that our buddy John talked to me about, and I heard you mention it because at the time I was still fixing and working on the Timnatana deck, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. I don't want to give up Timna though, and I don't want to give up Oof. Both those cards are really, really, really good. I really like casting them right now. But I let it stew in my head. I'm like, I think this deck just wins faster.
It does,
and I think it also provides it still is card draw in the command zone. And then the other downside is it feeds Docksides
it feeds
crazy.
The Dockside, but yeah. And you mentioned this one earlier, and it's one I got to see in person. Actually, it's super cool. Academy Manufactor and Will just goes absolutely bonkers.
It's insane. I saw that he was on this list. He was on this card. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. It gets to play a lot of silly cards that I really like, and it gets to do all the cool pod lines. It's on Vivian. It's on Birthing Pod. Anyway, this isn't even a deck tech about it. We're talking about the tournaments we've been going to. You, Atlas, have been on the hottest of hot streaks.
I have been doing pretty well at the events that I've been attending lately. Yeah.
Yeah. What did the the article that Gabby has put out recently? Like, I don't know, something about like top like three player
Oh,
in the Pacific Northwest or something like that.
I don't know. They were just talking about the Surfside
Yeah.
Invitational qualifier. It was pretty neat. That was a great event. Met some fantastic players. Played some really good games. That's actually the actual Surfside event's coming up this weekend, actually. So
It is. It is.
yes, very excited to go play in that. Little nervous for sure. Doing some tweaking and changing on the list and just practicing with it. But overall, um, just very excited and very ready.
Yeah. No, because that was the last like major you really did, right? Apart from the one
No,
we
there
just
was
got off of.
no, there was CEDH. There was the
Right.
CEDH
Right.
two
Yeah. There's the
event. Yeah,
CEDH event. Yeah. How was that one?
yeah,
How was that one?
it was really fun. As always, fantastic crowd. Marcus did an amazing job running it. It was just once again just a incredible coming together of the community for that area. A lot of really good players, some really good games. Met some new people that I hadn't seen before, so that was really neat. And I hope they continue to show up to different events. And then played some really great games with a whole bunch of uh, familiar faces and even some people from like our little team. Wanted to give a shout out to my friend David, who
Let's go.
yeah, he plays in our group regularly. He had never made a top cut in an event before,
Yeah, he
and
didn't. But he's made it
also
now.
also shout out to Evan. Evan from the Mock Stars
Mhm.
was 16th due to some unfortunate circumstances. Wasn't able to make it back, and therefore David got bumped into the 16th slot at the top 16 cut, and so I got to play against him in that semis round. One of the best games I've ever played. Shout out to Elmer and Dylan as well if you guys listen to this at all. But fantastic match. Loved playing with y'all. And then I was fortunate enough to win that game and make it to the top 4. Got to play with some really good players in that one as well. And our buddy Josh actually ended up winning the whole thing. So that was really, really cool.
Mono green takedown, baby.
Mono green takedown.
I loved hearing that it was you guys at the table, and then Josh won it. I'm like, oh, someone fumbled hard. Is what happened.
Well, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. But like,
no,
I'm not.
Josh
I'm not,
Josh is
yeah,
a
Josh
fantastic
played really
player.
well.
Don't pull from his win. He's a
I'm
great
not.
player.
I'm
The
not.
games
He is one of our like mono green experts that I'm like, yeah, this guy he's keeping the mono green Nissan dream alive. I have to root for him. Like I heard he made it to the final. Like, yeah, he's got to win it. He's got to win it. But as a Nissan player, I understand how easy it is to get shut down.
He was the dark horse for sure. He
100%.
He came out of nowhere and blew everyone out of the water. It was great.
No, I'm not pulling away from Josh. I understand mono green, so I understand like what has to happen for you to lose. And the fact that you overcame it, fantastic. Love hearing mono green on top. Love hearing my boy Yisan on top.
Yeah. And then this most recent event that we just played, it was pretty small. We played a small event for charity, a local charity called Gabby's Kids. Supports youth in the community and just the community in general. Really helps with a lot of different things. But that was a smaller event. It took place this past July 29th. So there were a lot of different events going on at different places in the area that day. So it wasn't a huge poll, but we got up to just about 20 players. Raised like $700 for charity.
Let's go.
So that was awesome. And then played some really good games that, like you said, you got to debut your Tim Natana deck at a more serious like Comp REL event for the first time. How'd that go?
So I went 0-1.
The best record.
No, it's about on par for me. It was really, really tough because I felt very in control. My presence was felt at the table, which is something that I hadn't felt in CDH in a very long time, if ever, really. Where I felt like everything I was doing was impactful. I was very much preventing wins. I was very threatening at nearly every stage of the game. I was doing the game really well. The deck is having issues closing out games, so tweaking some stuff going on through.
It's
There
always been one of
was
the issues of like those metapod shells, though.
yeah, which was what I initially wanted to stray away from because like Metapod and like Bloodpod proper plays like every Stax creature under the sun, and it is just beat you down turbo because all your Stax creatures are 2/3s and 3/3s. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but like you can play faster combos and just play like the good Stax cards and be just fine. And it's been very good. It toolboxes the way I need it to toolbox. It has intricate weird lines. It gets to play Kiki-Jiki combos, which is I love Kiki-Jiki. That's my boy. But it is a hard deck to pilot. There was a situation in game 2 where I was cracking a Grand Abolisher underneath my own Rule of Law just to bait out interaction, whatever. I had a Silence in hand and a Burnt Offering for the Archon of Myria. And I flubbed the line. Interaction came through on me. The table correctly assessed that my 3-drop was the critical thing on the board because I had a pod effect ready to go. I just tutored a birthing pod like before my turn, and I was supposed to Burnt Offer and sack the Archon to free myself from the Rule of Law, but I overthought the line and was like, no, I'll silence to protect my Archon or protect my Burnt Offering or whatever. As soon as I put the spell on the stack, I realized that was the wrong spell to cast, and I lost the game from under me.
And that's Comp REL for you. You put something on a stack, there are no takebacks, right?
Yeah, no, I went to reach for it, and I like grabbed my hand, like, that was so incorrect. That was so incorrect.
Oh, that feels terrible.
Yeah, that was the game 2. Game 1, it was a good game. It was a good game. Our buddy Mike was on Dawnwaker, and he put out turn 2 Basalt Kinnan with no outlet, so he just passed into one flip, which was a Dockside, which would have been 8 more flips, which would have gotten there. And it was a nightmare. Thankfully, we were able to fade that by just we had enough tricks on the board, and then the game just ground for like 8 turns. I was able to land a couple Stax creatures. No one was really developing things. Then I slammed a Mother of Machines, and then the game crawled to a grinding halt. We had Tyler on Marnius, and then our buddy Christian. He was playing Mono Blue. He was playing John Harkonnen. I forget what his actual name is, but he's like
Jonathan Harkness. It's the
It's like almost Jace.
Creature?
It's like baby Jace kinda. It flips. It's actually pretty cool. Like it's a cool deck. He was threatening wins with Thorkel. I had a Clutch Endurance to stop him after we like bounced him, and he like paradigm shifted his entire library. And then as we were all like trying to assess what we needed to do, the 3 of us were like, okay, we need to stop this Thorkel. What do we do? Tyler had enough mana to play a Hullbreaker Horror and had another rock in hand to start bouncing with. And I'm just like, oh, cool. So I guess it's Tyler's turn. We die. That's great. Love to hear that. And then eventually Tyler got it because we stopped him. That was game 1. The game 3 was a nail biter. It was an absolute nail biter. Our buddy, we had 2 Christians at the event. Our buddy on Hidatsugu and Kairi just played the game very, very well. I was able to get an oof out after everybody rocked. After everyone went like rocks all the way around, I had turn 1 oof off a Gemstone Cavern and just blocked the game.
I was watching this game. It was actually crazy.
It was a really, really good game. We got to a position where Christian was able to get out from underneath the Stax pieces after the Minsk and Boo player tried to win after swordsing an Oppo, but I had a Deadly Rollick for their commander because I had a feeling they had either... They just had the Hulk. They had the whole way to put Hulk on the battlefield, and they're probably going to mince to try and stack it because they ended up gambling for Greater Gargadon later on. So I sniped the sack outlet just to stop them right there. And that was really good, but it also freed me from the Oppo, and I just like slammed out just to survival earlier. After how could I forget? We started off one of our locals. He was playing the Atali brew, and he slammed a turn 2 Atali on us. It was insane. He went like land dork Lotus Jewel Lotus Crypt into pass into untap slam Atali, find survival. I think the other cards weren't super duper relevant. He found a survival, and he just started to convert into the Teamer line, the Teamer Sabertooth Dockside line. But we had a bolt for the Teamer Sabertooth when he didn't have enough mana to keep it going. Stopped it there, and the game was wild. Like everyone was doing everything to win. If I got back to my turn on the final turn pass, I was so locked. I was so locked and ready to go.
Yeah, that was it was a really intense game. There was almost the Christian on Hidetsugu and Kairi almost flubbed his win. He used what was it? Was Malakir's Rebirth or something? So whenever a creature dies, it returns to play. Basically, gives Undying. And he sacks Hidetsugu and Kairi, casts Unto the Infinite, draws his library, puts a card back. Then the trigger for the Undying goes back on the stack, goes to reanimate his commander, which Hidetsugu has an Enter the Battlefield trigger.
To
It
draw
says Brainstorm.
3.
It's literally just Brainstorm.
Literally
trigger,
Brainstorm,
but
yep.
you must draw 3 cards. It's only 1 card in his library, so he had to do some shenaniganery with like Dress Down and some stuff like that because he ended up
Really
putting the
good,
wrong
really
card back into his
creative.
library. But
Really
yeah,
creative line.
very, very good line. Very good line. He was able to squeak it in there. So
Yeah.
very, very good game. And then we moved into top 10, smaller, so just cut directly to top 10 instead of 16. First and second seed out of Swiss were locked. They were Tyler on Marnius Calgar, his version. It's like an Esper Thief thing. Really cool.
Really sick deck. Every single time I play that deck, it's insane.
Yeah, another person we know, Aaron, was playing Tevishzot and Crom.
Mm-hmm.
They got like a Nozless, sort of Grixis value town, like Kitten Breach, lot of stuff going on. Very cool line. And then top 10, so there were 2 pods competing for slots 3 and 4. If I'm recalling correctly, I was in the lower ranked pod in 10 and ended up fighting against Hidetsugu and Kairi, Gearson, and Hullen. The Bant, like cast creatures, draw cards, put lands into play, like
just silly value. Silly value.
It's like Bant Brostorm stuff. And then I was playing my usual shenaniganery with Kenrith, and then the upper ranked pod was some sort of Dawnwaker deck. Tivit. What were the other two? The other two were Dawnwaker, Tivit. I cannot for the life of me. One of them was Shalayan Halar.
Ooh, Shalu Nalu.
And I cannot for the life of me place what the 4th deck at that table was. But I ended up winning my pod. Our friend David ended up winning his pod with Tivit once again, making it past the top cut this time and into the final pod, and then played a very interesting game after that. Tyler, first seat, slams a turn 2. I ended up mulling to 5. David mulled to like 5 or 6. I think Aaron mulled to like 6, maybe second 7 at the best. Anyways, Tyler first seat keeps his first 7, and then just slams a turn 2 Smothering Tithe, followed by turn 3 Marnius, and I was ready to concede, and David persuaded us not to, and then that was immediately followed by me being able to Besage the Smothering Tithe. 2 Toxic Deluges cleared the board. Somebody overloaded a Rift at some point, and we were just there for like 2 hours slugging it out.
I feel like if a Rift resolves in that pod, it you're either winning or the game goes on for another half hour.
Yeah, it was. There was a lot of stuff happening past the point where I was like, this game's over. There's a Marnius and a Tithe in play on turn 3, and we have like 2 lands apiece. Like we're not getting anywhere, right?
This is terrible. Yeah.
So I thought it was over, and somehow we managed to dig our way out. So
that
just goes to show, don't give up too soon, right?
Don't concede. Which
is something I never concede. I'm always the one to say, let's play it out. Like let's not give up just yet. And I don't know why. I wasn't feeling it that day. I was ready to pack it in. Turns out, good thing I didn't. So.
Yeah, no, and then you made it to... Oh, no, that was finals, right? That was finals?
That was the finals.
That was final, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, it was... I paid attention a little bit to that game, but I was very out of it at the end of the day, so I was just very much like, I need to just recharge from Magic and, like, recenter myself. It yeah, going 0-1 after not playing for a while, like it hurt, but I figured it was mostly rust I was shaking off. If anything, it's like it was more me testing our meta, and I think just being able to just be more proactive right now is better than being like stack 0 reactive or like fully in those cases. I
Yeah,
feel like right now with everyone playing like these really harsh symmetrical effects, if you have your window, just full commit. You know.
I think that is a lot of what it's boiling down to right now is like being able to slow down your opponents is really good, but you
Mm-hmm.
want to be generating some advantage at the same time
Definitely,
because
definitely.
a lot of the like rule of law, obviously super strong card, not smashing that. It can just positively lock down games, but because of a lot of the styles that we're seeing played, at least in our area right now, somebody wasting 3 mana to develop a rule of law doesn't actually necessarily
Doesn't
lock
do
everyone
enough.
else out of the game.
Doesn't do
It
enough.
might just end up like slowing down the game, um, which while good for the person playing the rule of law, like definitely, um, it doesn't if it doesn't lock other players out of the game to the same effect that it has in the past, where it's like if you're playing against Grixis Storm, a rule of law just kind of turns off their
Hoses
deck.
them.
They
Yeah,
cannot beat that,
it
right?
completely stops them.
But if you're playing against 5-color pile or like 2-color, like something has a dedicated strategy it can fall back on, and they just sit on these like 1 or 2 engines that they set in place, or just even if they're just playing land after land each turn, and just setting up,
You're
waiting for an
developing still.
opportunity. Eventually, they will have the resources, and they were able to spend their 3 mana and their 1 spell on their turn to develop something that advances their board state rather than a rule of law, which is just going
Mm-hmm.
to slow down the game and hold everyone else back, and you didn't actually get anywhere. So
Or like if you're on it, you'll be able to land something like I don't know, like a survival of the fittest, or like you'll find a vampiric tutor and you'll wait for someone to like cast something that needs to be answered, and so 2 players are locked out of casting for the turn. You go, cool, I'm gonna vamp tutor. I'm gonna put my win condition on top now.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. You
And at
just
that point, like you slam your win condition and you're good to go.
yeah, and the more we are seeing decks that are able to win at instant speed, the more relevant this becomes.
Mm-hmm.
Decks that play Emergent Zone or effects like that, um, things like Gandalf the White, where they can set that down at instant speed, wait till the next turn, and then put their win condition to play at instant speed once all the other players are silenced by the rule of law. Really, really strong.
Very strong.
Decks like Kenrith, where you have entire combo lines that can go off under a rule of law and still be able to hold up a protection spell. Like if you're doing a Dockside loop with your Kenrith and your Mayhem Devil, you don't have to cast a single spell. If anyone tries to interact with you, just wait till like almost everyone's silenced and then go for it. And then if someone tries to interact with you, you just counterspell whatever that action is and you win the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting seeing the meta shift. Are we still in like the proper rock paper scissors? I feel like we're definitely speeding up, but not like in the same way that we sped up like last year, for example. Almost,
Yeah, it's really
it's
weird,
a
right?
very different style of speed. Like it's not. I hesitate to say fast. It's more aggressive. I think feels better to word it.
I don't really know, but I do understand. I think what you're trying to get at, because I have definitely noticed that too, where it's like everyone's used to the rock paper scissors of like stacks turbo mid range,
Yeah.
in CDH, and right now it feels like we're in this weird spot where you're playing like mid range because that's the thing to do, but like also just like really aggressive mid range is the thing to be
Hmm.
playing right now, where you're like turbo Nas is fine, I guess, but everyone
Yeah.
knows what it does. Everything stops it, right? So that's like not really the thing to be doing right now.
Not really. No.
You want like some sort of like resilient strategy that can grind, but also like you want to
You
be able
want
to
your
present
commander
a
to be an
win
outlet.
very quickly. Yeah, you want
Yeah.
your commander to do something directly in a lot of cases. Things like Timna, Tivit is insane, right? It's like Tivit's kind of the
Tivet's like the poster
definition
child for it. Yeah.
for exactly what we're looking for, where he's a combo piece. He's a 1-card combo. With Time Sieve, he generates advantage both via cards and mana, and he hits people. And he does all of this without casting a spell.
And he has Ward 3, so you cannot
Not
get rid of
irrelevant.
him. You
Not
cannot kill
irrelevant.
him.
It's such a pain in the ass to deal with that card once it hits the table.
It's literally everything you want in a commander. I'd say right now that really the only thing I would say that rivals that is like maybe Kenrith, just because it has raw utility.
Yeah, and I don't even think Kenrick's as good as Tivit, just as a
No,
card in
no.
comparison. No, it's a lot of what Kenrick does is he provides an outlet in the command zone to infinite mana combos that can go off by themselves, which is really strong. But also like he can do stuff under rule of law. He can grind. He's very flexible, which means that he's going to perform well in a lot of different scenarios where Tivit may not perform as well in one or two of those scenarios. He might perform very poorly.
Mhm.
So it's just a very interesting. I don't know. I've taken to my answer to Tivit at this point is clone a Tivit, make my Tivit bigger, don't get hit by Tivit.
Yeah, that feels like a pretty decent strategy. I feel like just not letting the Tivit land is also a very good strategy. I feel like he's the only, like, he's one of those creatures that, like, as a creature is big. As a commander, it's even worse because you have access to him. So it's such a target to put on you, the Tivit player, because, like, your commander is genuinely going to get countered, like, a good chunk of the time. Like, if someone's holding a, like, we'll say it's just an essence scatter effect. It doesn't need to be essence scatter exactly, but like a creature counter spell, it's going to be held for the Tivit every time,
A lot
unless
of
someone's
times,
like
yeah.
actively threatening a win. Like the counter spell that can hit a creature is going to be pointed towards the Tivit if Tivit's in the pod.
I think most cases that's probably true. The thing that I find very interesting is that, or not interesting, but the thing that I'm very grateful for, I should say, is that Tivit doesn't have green, so they don't get access to Delighted Halfling, because that would just be an absolute nightmare.
It's alright. They just play Gemstone Caverns, dude, or not Gemstone Caverns.
Cavern
Cavern of
Souls.
Souls. They just play
Yeah,
Cavern of Souls.
but can you imagine if they had access to Delighted Halfling effect, either in
And
white
crop rotation.
or if they had green, they could just like even if it's just Delighted Halfling, they go, all right, turn to Ranger Captain Evios, fetch up my Halfling, cast my Halfling on 3, cast my Tivit uncounterable with protection on 4.
So Tivit should just start playing Expedition Map.
Tivit should start playing Expo maps so they can get their cavern and just make sure that Tivit
don't
sticks
think
every
that's
time.
a terrible idea, actually.
I've heard worse takes, but
I don't
that's still
think
a hard
it's terrible.
ass.
I don't. It sacks the time sieve.
It does do that. It
It
does
sacks
sack
the time
time seed,
sieve. It also
and
guarantees
it's
your.
tutorable off Saga.
It gets you Ancient Tomb. It gets you Cavern of Souls. It puts the land to your hand. It finds you Odawar. I'm pilled on this.
You're gonna be building Tivit with
No, probably
Expedition
not.
Map.
I'm probably not building Tivit. I think it's interesting tech, though. That probably isn't worth the slap. I think it's interesting if you want more of that, I guess. Yeah.
Speaking of interesting Tivit tech, I was watching one of the top 16 matches from the Cookout the other day, something like that. And there was a Tivit that was playing Gandalf the White, and that is a really, really sweet card to play in that list.
So I'm so ignorant to everything that comes out recently. I don't know what this card does.
This card is insane. It's white, and 3 for a legendary Avatar Wizard, I think, or something along those lines. He's a 4/4 with Flash. He's Panharmonicon for your legendary creatures. And he also says that your legendary creatures and your artifacts can be cast as though they had Flash.
Oh.
Yeah.
There's like 5 different Gandalfs.
Yeah, this is Gandalf the
White.
The White. I think it's just called Gandalf
the
White. Yeah.
This card seems insane.
It's crazy in Tivit too.
Insane.
Your Tivit ETBs, you make 4 treasures and 6 clues. It's pretty good.
Well, because David's still on both Vidalcanori and Leyline, right?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware,
yeah,
he was
really
this
wanting
idea
to be
on Flash Tivit. He was kind of ahead on that.
I think it's very real. I think it's incredibly real.
I mean, your commander, that its biggest weakness is that it cannot attack the turn it comes down, can suddenly attack the turn it comes down.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
It's very good. Yeah. The card's insane. Oh my god. I have to ask, because we talked about this earlier. How do you feel about the Lord of the Rings set at this point? Because I think I have opinions at this point.
I'm pretty fine with it. I think that like it is the definition of power creep set, but I mean, we're just bound to see that over time. I think we're just
Yeah,
going to continue to see more. So
because what it's been 2 years since Modern Horizons 2, which I would say is the
something
last,
like that.
which I would arguably say is the last like power creep set, because apparently we're gonna have those now.
I don't know,
Or
dude.
it feels like
New
it.
Eldraine. I'm getting ready. Get ready for cards to be an absolute like just
I am
different level of powerful.
I'm so curious to see where they take the power level of Eldraine, because in my head, you either match it and go past it, or you tune it the way fuck down.
I don't know, man. There's like we've already seen like 4 or 5 cards spoiled, and while not all of them are zingers, they all seem really strong within their own context. And holy hell, the one like dedicated card for Commander that I see at this point is Talion the Kindly Lord. This card is wild. Blue, black, and 2 for a 3/4 flyer. And it says, as it enters the battlefield, you choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell that has a converted mana cost, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, you draw a card and they lose 2 life.
How did I miss this card?
It's kind of crazy. There's been a lot of talk about it on like the Kenrith Discord and in a couple of other servers. It's just saying how wild this card has the potential to be by naming just a number like 1 or 2. Like if you're against a lot of green decks, you name 1 because you're going to hit all their dorks and a lot of their interaction cards and tutors and stuff. If you think that you're going to be playing a more control-heavy matchup, you name 2. Or even like a faster matchup, you name 2 because you're gonna hit like draw cards off those Timnos, those rocks, oofs, dockside extortionists. If you name 1, you get Thrasios. If you name 2, you also get Thrasios. So just knowing those numbers to name in each pod contextually is gonna be kind of wild.
I mean, I feel like if you just look at the commanders and be like, yeah, there's a Thrasios in this pod, I'm gonna name 2.
Well, that's the thing though. You could also name 1 because you still draw a card off them casting Thrasios because it has 1 power.
Wait, does it not do? I thought I did CMC.
It's power or toughness or CMC.
Okay.
So any card.
Okay.
So if they cast a mana drain and you've named 2, or a vampiric tutor and you've named 1, you're still drawing a card and they're still losing 2 life.
If Thrasios is in the pod, you can literally name 1, 2, or 3, and you will still draw a card off the Thrasios. Yeah, because Thrasios has 3 toughness.
1, 2, or 3 Thrasios. Dude, maybe Talion will finally make Thrasios players not want to play Thrasios. I doubt it. But there's hope. There's light in this tunnel.
I feel like Thrasios players will want to stop playing Thrasios because it's Thrasios. No, I think Thrasios is still like a mainstay of the form. I don't think Thrasios is going anywhere. I don't think it's
unfortunate.
But yeah, so yeah, I think I largely agree with you on like Lord of the Rings being a power creep set. Like it's absolutely shake things up. The one card I was not anticipating that until I started seeing it, I didn't believe was the One Ring.
This card is
every time
I have no words.
Every time I have seen that card hit the battlefield, my heart just stopped. I'm like, oh.
It's 4 mana, draw 1 card. It can't possibly be that bad.
I don't pay attention to the fact that I'm going to untap and draw 2.
It's only 2 cards. It can't be that bad.
And it's only that one time, guys.
Yeah, exactly. You'll never draw 3 cards the next time.
No,
because the game will be over after it's been around for 3 rotations. God. Someone will have won, most certainly, right?
Yeah,
right.
So my game 3 at the last tournament, Christian had a One Ring tapped on 3, and I'm like, I need to put this oof out like immediately, and this card cannot go away until Christian needs to win the game. So they were just dying to their own One Ring. At one point they had to go to they were at 7 life. They were able to tap it to go to 4. They had a mana crypt out to go to an extra turn to Nexus of Fate to actually win the game. They dropped to 3 and they had to win their mana crypt flip to win, all because I locked it down with oof. The One Ring is this card is insane. That's the one. That's the other thing about the Timna deck is that I can't play One Ring because I'm on oof. That's
true.
Yeah,
deck you would be able to play the One Ring in
the baby pod. The baby pod. Yeah,
the baby.
That baby pod. Yeah, that's the other reason. That's the other thing that's pulling me toward the deck. No, the One Ring is ludicrous. It's bonkers. It is silly.
If people talk about how Rhystic Study defines the format, like we're in
this
a
card's
going
to define the format.
This card is just a second copy of Rhystic Study, except you can play it in any deck regardless of the color that the color slices that you're in, right?
Yeah,
It's wild.
you can have hands where you have like Ancient 2 Mana Crypt and just play this on turn 1 and win the game.
And the really wild thing to me is that it's even playable in like decks that really care about their life total, like Nozlists and stuff, because it's only punishing you on your upkeep, so you'll know exactly what it's going to deal you on your upkeep, and you can math for that accordingly. Like the Mardu shells that are playing this now, even though they're
Insane.
on Adnaz and or Pier and or Citadel, it's kind of, I didn't get it at first because like, oh, this card deals you damage. But if the ring resolves, like that becomes your Naz. You can now afford to play a much safer, slower game because you're going to be drawing cards just really consistently at an insane rate. I was playing a game at one of the events a while back, and there was a Mardu player on Dihada, Exodius. They drew like 20 cards off their ring because it just stuck around for 4 turns, and then
Jesus.
presented, because the ring was drawing them so many cards, they were just presenting win after win after win because they were always just gassed back up, right? And it doesn't rely on your opponents doing anything like
At
the
all.
same way Rhystic Study does. You're just drawing the cards.
Yeah, because at this point, anytime I see a Rhystic Study, like it's just fear of resistance at this point. Everyone is just paying into it, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a shift that I've seen as people have stopped trying to, for the most part, in my experience, stopped trying to beat the Rhystic Studies, and they just kind of play around it until they either have protection or they have a way to remove it. And then they go for their wins. Which I think is, at least from my perspective, I think that is the correct way to handle the card.
I agree.
Yeah.
Anytime I see it, I literally just I pay for everything until I can land a Silence or Grand Abolisher, and then I stop paying for it. Unless like it's like removal specifically. Like I have to, like I'm going to tap out for my Tymna. I'm going to pay for my Tymna, but I'm holding this Deadly Relic or this SWAT in hand.
Yeah, and there will be times that you don't pay for it if you're trying to feed somebody a Rhystic to find a counterspell or whatnot, or if it's like, well, you caught me, like it came down before I got my turn, so I guess I'm feeding you twice here so I can play my stuff, and then I'll be able to pay for it in the future. But at that point, it's still only a divination, which is not a CDH card. So
it isn't. The other thing with the One Ring, especially in like the Naz list, is if you can like place it at a certain point, it protects your life total.
It does. Protection from everything is way more relevant text than people think it is.
I remember reading going, okay, cool, protection from everything, so like you can't get like hit. That's okay. That's cool. That comes up a lot. There's a lot of combos that deal you damage specifically.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it. As far as I can tell, the only way that you can lose the game in CEDH, at least in almost all cases, is if the One Ring is protecting you, is to Thoracle, because Thoracle says you win the game. I don't actually think there are any combos aside from that, any cards that are played right now that say you win the game. Everything else targets an opponent to lose it, or like deals them damage or something like that. Like you're going infinite with Kiki-Jiki, someone's slapping the shit out of you with Winota.
Or Tivit.
If you're getting breached and Thoracle is not an option for whatever reason, Tivit tries to deal damage. It's until your next turn. They can't time seize you out.
Which is a ludicrous interaction. As soon as I saw that interaction happen specifically, where Tivit time seize combo, but there was someone with a One Ring out, I went, "Oh, this card's real."
Yeah, it's very good. Like you can't even if unless you're milling yourself out and casting a Thoracle, the breach lines can't even win you a game because you can't target an opponent to mill them out with your Brain Freeze line. So you have to find some other way around that. You can't target an opponent to mill wheel.
That's okay. Yeah, that makes that I.
So Jeskai lists can't win the game through it, right? Yeah, can't like Jeska Ishai would be a great example because typically they'd one punch man you, or they would infinite mana into Jeska, but they can't draw their library to have their outs. They can't breach into you because they can't target you. Like all of these things you're protected from. It's way more relevant than people think.
You can't die to dual caster Twin Flame or dual caster Saw combos contextually. Kiki-Jiki lines need very specific setups to kill. You essentially need to have like you need to do the Dockside Mayhem Devil line. Essentially, you make infinite creatures, make infinite Docksides. You have a Mayhem Devil. Cool. Go to your upkeep. I'm gonna kill you. You do something. I'm gonna kill you. You do something. I'm gonna kill you. Like that's the only setup that I know of in like the non-blue world. I'm like, yeah, that's like the only way I can beat the One Ring is
Yeah.
like I specifically need the Dockside Mayhem Devil line.
Yeah, there are ways, but
Yeah, like there's
it
ways
basically
around it,
boils
but
down to
it's
you have to be able to win at instant speed in order to beat that
yeah.
card on the turn it lands. So
It turns out all you needed to make Teferi's Protection really good was make it so that every deck can play it and also let it draw a million cards.
yep, only needed to increase it by 1 mana too.
Yeah. I really like Bowmasters. I really like Bowmasters. I've had so much fun playing with that card. That card is just fun to play.
Bowmasters is wild.
Yep.
It's pretty format warping. And then
Yeah, I'd say so.
there's some
point.
other.
I think it's in the contention. Yeah.
There are some other things like Born Upon a Wind that also are having impacts on the format. But yeah, like at the CEDH, to get back on topic here before we stray too far, but the CEDH event, Jordan,
oh yeah, we were talking about that.
yeah, but my friend Jordan from the Mock Stars was playing his Grixis shell. He was on like a Necropotence Born Upon a Wind package, and that card like really livens back up Necropotence shells because now you have Liberator, which is just a better version of Shimmermere. You have Born Upon a Wind, you have Emergent Zone. Like there's just a number of different things to make the shell more viable, which is really nice for
fans. It wins in cleanup, right?
It wins in cleanup. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's or it can win in cleanup if you're doing flash stuff. So neat interactions.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because the necro cards go to your hand on end step. Right.
Yeah. So so CDH was 2 weeks ago now. That was I played in that event. Mentioned it earlier. Really fun. Just to summarize the rounds briefly, first round was me, Paco and Halden, Najila, and Yuriko. Paco and Halden is a deck that I have not actually ever played against before.
Really?
Absolutely wild.
It's a crazy deck. It's a crazy deck.
Paco was swinging for 8 on turn 3, and it was just insane.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah, so that was really interesting. That player's first event too. First time going to a major tournament like that, and they did really well. I did end up winning that game, but it had to do with my turn 2 Ristic Study that nobody paid for. So that tends to do it.
Everyone's paying for Ristic Study. Gee, I wonder why.
Yeah, right? That might have had something to do with
maybe.
My win. Round 2 was against some fantastic players, against Buddy Josh, like I said, a TNT player named Andre, who I've played with before, and then Antonio. Antonio plays Blue Farm. He's like a really big member of the CDH community in like the CDH Discord and stuff. Super cool guy. So that game ended up going to a draw. And then round 3 was... I'm trying to think. What was round 3? Round 3 was me, Tevrog, 0 game actions.
Let's go.
5-color Sisay, and a different Paco and Halden player. So 2 in one day. I really got to experience the Puppo Bonk. It was pretty interesting. But this game led into one of the big lessons from this tournament that I just had reinforced was don't kill players or don't take players out of the game unless there is a reason to take the player out of the game. Because if you kill a player or if you put them in a position where they're no longer a part of the game, the dynamic shifts drastically. It goes from being a 4-player game that becomes relatively balanced because it is to some extent 1v1, where that 1 versus 1 dynamic is just shifting between 2 players at a time, to 2v1 and at all times. And that dynamic is very different.
Very lopsided, too.
Very lopsided, because sometimes the 2v1 that you think is happening is not the 2v1 that's actually happening. So, like, sometimes a player is in a game-winning position, and they are on the 2-person team because someone else is trying to do something that neither of them like. And it's really, really interesting. Case in point, this game 3, was it was I spent the majority of the game locked under a curse totem from Tevrog, and an Oko that had hit my Kenrith, but I also had a
Oh,
Dranith Magistrate in play.
oh,
Yeah,
what is
so
this?
I spent most of the game just beating the shit out of this Tevrog player with like 3/3s and 1/1s because I couldn't do anything else. But I had resolved the
Oh,
Dranith Magistrate, so and there was also still a Curse Totem, so Sisay couldn't win because they had neither resolved Sisay nor could they activate Sisay. And Paco and Alden cast a turn 2 Pupper that was immediately swords, followed by my turn 2 Dranith. So they didn't recast Pupper, I think, ever actually, and they were hellbent for most of the game. Um,
yeah, I
but
wouldn't either.
so I spent most of my time punching the Tevrog player because I need this curse totem going. Because if it leaves, I'm in a position where I'll be able to just like grind and win the game because my Dranith is still locking out Sisay, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, get to the last cycle of the game. I have put Sisay to, or not Sisay. I have put Tevrog to like 3 life because I've just been hitting them so much. Dranith has been elked by Oko. Kenrith has been elked by Oko. The only thing that I've done is I was able to play a lot of lands, a couple of mana sources this game. I have like 3 or 4 cards in hand. None of them are super good except for the Cyclonic Rift that I tutored for using my Spellseeker, and everyone knows I have it, right? And that's great, but because of the way turn order's working, and it's me, then Tevrog, then Sisay, right? So if I kill them, now I have to contend with all the interaction from Sisay on my attempted win, plus my stuff's still elked. Have to get around that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not great. Paco and Halden also still has cards. Could be interaction. Not great. So I opt not to kill Tevrog because I have the Curse Totem. And I have a Gambit that I will disclose to you shortly, is that because Dranith has been elked, Sisay can now cast their commander, but they still can't activate their commander
From the
because
Curse Totem,
of the Curse Totem. That said, the Tevrog player has already disclosed that they have at least one piece of counter magic, being a Pyroblast, that they can use on a blue spell. Probably going to hit my Cyclonic Rift if I try and overload it, so I'm going to opt not to cast it and just sit here on my padded life total.
Makes sense.
Goes past Tevrog, still does nothing, passes turn, Sisay untaps, doesn't pay for their Mystic Remora after 6 turns, casts Sisay, goes to combat. Combat, guess who they attack? Tevrog, who's at 3 life and has the Curse Totem, because they can't win the game for their Curse Totem. I have nothing. I have 3 cards of Cyclonic Rift. I have nothing. I'm nowhere close to winning this game. I just have a bunch of untapped mana. So of course they're going to attack Tevrog, because if they kill Tevrog and remove the Curse Totem, they win the game. There's basically nothing we can do about it, right? Other than overload the Cyclonic Rift, but they probably have a counterspell because of Mystic Remora has drawn them like 12 cards. Cut to, all right, well, at this point I can't afford to let the Curse Totem leave, because if I do that, Sisay's gonna pop off. So my out is to overload the Cyclonic Rift. Tevrog's out is also to let the Cyclonic Rift resolve, because otherwise they're dead and have 0 shot at winning the game. This was my bet. So looking at the turn order and how things are going to pan out, I was guessing that Sisay's going to try and kill Tevrog, and they will be forced to let my Rift resolve if they want to remain in the game and have any possible chance at winning. Sisay Swan Songs. That Swan Song eats a Pyroblast. I think there might have been one more counterspell that ate a Tybalt's Trickery or something like that.
Oh, damn. They just had everything to cover it.
At any rate, they both end up tapping out. The Rift resolves. Nobody has any boards. Paco and Halden goes to their turn, and I think recasts Paco, maybe? Swings probably at me for some amount of damage that didn't matter because I hadn't been hit all game because I had all the creatures. And I promptly untap and win the game because everyone's F6, right? So that said, if the Sisay player had just kept grinding and looked for an out that was either protection into a kill or something like that, they might have still been able to pull out the game. So, long story short, don't remove players, don't kill players, unless you know for a fact you're going to win. That was my big lesson of the day. The rest of the games were pretty straightforward. Round 4 was a draw. It was an ID, but round 5, I won after some really tight gameplay from my opponents and a lot of back and forth. I was able to pull it out. Top 16 pod, once again, fantastic game, some great gameplay. Everyone did really well. Another example of only kill people when you know that you have the win, and that would be in my case. I killed Elmer, who is on a 5 color Cedh list as well, because I know that they're the only one who's been drawing cards off their one ring, and I know David's hellbent. He's on Tivit, so he has nothing, no clues to crack or anything like that. Just a blind obedience sitting in play. And then Dylan is playing Rocco. He's been on 2 cards the whole game. Hasn't really been doing anything because of Adrenaline Vala being in play. Go to combat, kill Elmer, move to my second main phase, win the game. Because Elmer can't interact, and he was the only one who could have interacted. Right? Top 4 pod was pretty standard. It was me, Lauren, also playing Kenrith, Josh playing Yisan, and Luke playing Tevrog. Pretty interesting game. A lot of back and forth at the beginning. Lauren had a strong start with an early Kenrith. Josh was popping off with Yisan, developing mana.
My boy.
Luke cast a Fire Covenant and followed it up with a Toxic Deluge for good measure. Unfortunately, he forgot about Kenrith's +1 ability and the treasures that Lauren had, so he buffed his Kenrith out of the way. I draked Lauren's Kenrith. Lauren tried to drake it back, but I clicked his drake out of his hand. We were able to establish the op agent to slow down and stop Yisan. And then in one of the other things, going back to what I said earlier about don't take players out of the game, I think more out of fear than anything else, Luke decided to polymorph something on his board. I think it was his Rogue Rack, hitting a Sire of Insanity and immediately taking me and Lauren off all control magic while Yisan is in play, held back by the only thing holding Yisan back is this op agent that the deck is the deck's one weakness, and so of course it's designed to have answers to it to beat.
It has every answer in the world against it.
Fortuitously, exactly. I was able to rip a Force of Will off of my one ring that I had that game to counter Josh's first attempt to remove it. And the second attempt succeeded, even though I did have outs. I fumbled the bag real hard and forgot to reanimate a clone to double up on the opposition agent before it left play. So that was on me, but also there might have been other answers, both to my board, which was getting oppressive, as well as to Josh's board, which had win demonstrated. Mm-hmm. Had either Lauren or myself had hands. So once again, we gotta don't take players out of the game, especially if they're providing an asset to you. Think about these things first.
Yeah, that was one of the harsh lessons when Trainer was back on Sire of Insanity. Is like sometimes ripping everybody's hand is the wrongest move you could possibly make.
It sounds so good. My opponents don't have cards, but then especially in something like Chainer, you're like, oh, I don't have counterspells. So if someone has something on board already, or if their cards are just better, or if they rip the nuts, like sometimes you want your opponents to have counterspells.
Yeah. No, and that's been a lesson I've been learning, especially with Thalia, OG Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. There have been games where I have this card and I look on the board and I start counting mana. I'm like, I cannot cast this spell. Yeah, there are too many things that it boxes out. Other times, it's a great card. I've had great success with it, but I feel very similar with like Sire of Insanity and Thalia. Just sometimes you want your opponents to play the game a little bit.
Yeah, it's dynamic for sure.
And that kind of like loops back into like the whole like I don't know if Stacks is really good right now because I think I want my opponents to be as live as I need them to be. I think.
Yeah.
Like I want you to have the counter spells when the early Thoracle or the earlier like Kin and Basalt Monolith comes out, and I'm like, I kept a lot of dorks. I don't know what's gonna happen. Are we dead? Are we dead?
Yeah, the Thalia thing really strikes a chord with me too, because I remember hearing stories from Jaden, who we've had on the podcast before, talking about how he's been up against players who've jammed like a turn 1 or 2 Thalia while he was playing Rocco, and that just doesn't affect the deck.
Nope.
So the other blue players are locked out of their Force of Wills that they literally had, and he gets a free win the game. Mm-hmm. And you look at the board and you see that, and you're like, man, I just get to go for it because it doesn't matter what my opponents have.
Yeah.
And I've done that too. You abuse like Thorn of Amethysts and stuff that your opponents cast. So
it's like, cool. My deck is literally designed to play this card. Thanks for the free protection. I guess I don't need to slow the game down first. I'm going to try and win now.
Yeah, you just it basically it's a reinforcement of that lesson that you learned as a kid. Just because you can does not mean you should. Just because
100%.
you can polymorph or cast a Thalia or remove a stacks piece does not mean that you should do that. Don't play out of a place of fear. Play out of a place of understanding and game sense. Like, know what's going on and know the impact that your game actions are gonna have before you take them.
Also, sometimes the stacks piece isn't meant for you.
Yeah, just because it's holding you back doesn't mean it's not holding two other players back way, way, way more.
Yeah.
And here's the conundrum of stacks: is just because you don't see it having an impact
does not
doesn't
mean
mean
it
it isn't
isn't.
having an impact.
Does mean it isn't.
Just because that collector reef doesn't look like it's affecting
probably
the blue white player over there because they're hitting a land drop every turn does not mean that they're not sitting on like 3 artifacts and a dramatic reversal Isochron Scepter in their hand. Like, you just have to consider these things the X factors that you don't see.
Speaking of blue-white players and Thalias, I with Justin, he was playing Chun-Li. I put out a Thalia, and someone went, "Well, how am I going to interact?" I'm like, "This isn't this Chun-Li is coming down, and we have no way of stopping it. This is the thing that is going to stop it."
Yeah.
And like it wasn't even great. Like, it was just like some value stuff in there, and he exiled a Cyclonic Rift, and he sat on that the entire game. I'm just like, look at how much the Thalia is doing. It's stopping this player from killing us right now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Thalia's a great card if you can like maneuver it well and like deploy it well. It's a fantastic card. I've had great success with the card. Great success with it.
Well, yeah, it's really strong. It does what it's supposed to do very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
The problem that people run into with these stacks piece like effects is that sometimes they do their job too well and they're deployed at an incorrect time due to pilot error.
Mm-hmm. Or and unfortunately, it's one of those that like you can like read a primer and be like, "Oh, you want to do this in this situation." You're not gonna know when to Thalia. You're not gonna know when to put the stat. Yep. You're not gonna know if the rule of law you put out is like the right time.
It's a lot of just experience, and unfortunately, of course, sometimes that means you have to lose to get that experience. But it's one of those things that can also be mitigated by asking for, like, go back to that whole idea that we've introduced before. Is like, talk to other players who know more. Ask for input. Say, hey, you don't have to tell them everything, but you can like tell them like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this style of effect, or like slowing the game down, or developing a stacks piece. Like, what should I be looking at when assessing this? And of course, you're going to get skewed information because they're going to want to make sure that it benefits them, right?
Yeah.
But just because they're trying to use you and the information that you're providing doesn't mean that you can't glean something helpful out of that yourself. Sometimes you might gain extra information from what they don't say, like telling you that this is actually the correct time to do something like that. So it's just things to be aware of, right?
Yeah. Similarly, all this kind of lumps into each other. Wheels. We've been talking about wheels a lot recently, just in our group. Had a situation in the same tournament where we were talking about like wheeling at one point, and I pointed out, I'm like, homeboy to my right just dumped his hand. Do not wheel. Like, we don't wheel here. Not until like they're like sufficiently doing nothing with cards in hand. Like, they cannot just draw 5 cards for free. We are going to lose because they vomited their hand. Or like they're just so set up, like, even if like regardless of my hand in those situations, just like it's always who has the board presence, not necessarily who has like the hand and political presence, I guess, is always how I viewed it. Or how I've been viewing it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely all those things to consider before taking game actions, and how they're going to impact other players, and where those other players end up, how that's going to impact the end result of the game. You gotta look like it's like chess, right? You gotta look like 3, 4, 5 steps ahead.
Definitely. All right. Well, I only went to one tournament. That's all I got.
I have nothing else either.
All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us here at Ye Old Man on the Rocks. Always a pleasure. We'll catch you next time.